Why are we so polarized now? Social media. Some people are just like that from the beginning. The internet is giving platform for people to shout and everyone to hear. Back then, to argue you have to at least call the other person, so your audience is still just one person or your own group of people, not the public. I think our isolation from people who are different than us plays a big part in this. We've built up ways where we don't have to interact with others very much. Suburbs built away from others, isolation in our vehicles, big box stores with little human interaction. Last year I decided to bike to work and I was surprised how much more connected I felt to other people around me. I also worked at a job that attracted people from a different political leaning than I grew up with. It's amazing how much easier it is to have respect for people you disagree with when you actually spend time around them and hear their stories. It's by design. We're fighting each other while being robbed blind. Social media companies are way too good at getting you to hate your neighbors. Part of this is your perception. People always say, politics wasn't like this before, when in reality it was. Times like Bleeding Kansas, and civil rights movements, it's not, politics wasn't like this, it's, politics didn't affect me like this. The internet. I'd say that the easy answer seems to be social media, but I'd also point that politicians, media, and influential people often use the with me or against me, taking hard stances instead of being open to a dialogue. And as another element, I think that the worse living conditions we have now comparing to a couple decades ago also affect, since we are more enraged, frustrated, and this is reflected in the social media part, which lot of people used to let their anger go without taking into account that even through avatars, there's people on the other side. There are countries that spend billions of dollars to weaken the societies of their enemies. Russia, China, Iran use hybrid methods as it is much easier and way more effective than a direct conflict. Society has always been fractured. Have you heard of the US Civil War? 2.5% of the total population died. US Civil Rights era? US Revolution? Vietnam War protests? McCarthyism? That's just America. We just grew up in a particularly peaceful time in America. The 80s and 90s were great until 9/11 plunged us back into chaos. You literally answered yourself, you were young and don't remember it well. So long as we're fighting amongst ourselves, we can't fight the fucking power. The power is more powerful now than ever and they're doing their damnedest to shift our focus toward each other. If everyone would realize that the truly rich are the enemy and the ones pulling the strings, and that we're all poor, just to different degrees, I think we'd be a lot better off. Maybe we'd start holding our leaders accountable. Maybe. The snakes get fat while the good rats die, and all the pigs should be bled dry. Who's with me? It's a confluence of events, of course, but Operation Red Map is a big part of the story. https://www.newyorker.com/news/the-political-scene/america's-redistricting-process-is-breaking-democracy. Extreme gerrymandering is fucking us, and thanks to closed primaries and winner-take-all elections, the combination is nasty as hell. Nonpartisan primaries would help. Combined with ranked choice general elections would help more. Combined with multi-winner districts for proportional representation would help most. Social media has allowed us, in fact encouraged us, to surround ourselves only with the opinions of people we agree with, which makes any opposing view look extreme, as it's almost never encountered. It's mostly bots. 80+% of internet traffic. People need to start realizing they're not interacting with other humans. We're not polarized at all. It's a false perception. I can agree to disagree on a lot of things, but human rights are not one of those things. I love to diversify my social interactions, and my line of work I work with a lot of different types of people. But for close friends and partners, I really don't want to be disagreeing on fundamental human rights. Ever notice just how much more effort the government and elites put in to divide us ever since the Occupy Wall Street protests? Those scared them. A divided population is much easier to keep in control, I think, because in the past opinions didn't have such big consequences. I can't tolerate other people's opinion if that opinion means marginalizing or hurting other people, and it's that simple. You don't get to have an opinion on whether trans people deserve to exist, or whether refugees deserve shelter, or poor people deserve to eat. Since the 90s and early zeros, media outlets like Fox News, along with entertainers like Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, Tucker Carlson, along with politicians like Newt Gingrich, really started pushing the divisions. They used the media to manipulate and exaggerate in order to create anger and cause division in society, create scapegoats out of minority populations, and play into and draw out people's prejudices. You can say outlets like MSNBC do the same thing on the liberal side, and maybe that's true to a certain extent, but that was a later development as a reaction to Fox's extremism to try and counter it. Social media in the last decade has amplified voices on both sides, creating social bubbles where the polarization has become more extreme. Victories on the liberal side, such as equal rights for gay people, having a black president, Me Too, and BLM really drove a lot of conservatives into the deep end, maybe feeling like their own rights were under assault somehow. Trans people are the latest in a long line of scapegoat targets, where the media exaggerates and amplifies in order to cause division. Along with all that, it seems that in general, a lot of people these days are more prone to reactionary black and white thinking, have become very unforgiving, and quick to demonize, regardless of where they are politically. You grew up and realized we were polarized. When you were about 8, Clinton was impeached because he lied about his sex life. One of the most important leaders of the time, Gingrich, was having an affair at that time. Her was persecuting Clinton. https://abcnews.go.com/politics/story question #it =2937633 &page =1